Welcome, friends. Settle in, maybe grab your favorite drink, and get ready for a deep dive today. We're bridging the really personal with, well, the totally cosmic.
Yeah, we are. We're talking about the basic building blocks of reality itself, the stuff that makes color happen or how feelings can actually become solid.
Exactly. The ideas are pretty dense, not gonna lie, but we promise the vibe is definitely chill.
We kind of need that chill vibe because we're diving into some really early foundational stuff here, straight from the source material.
Right. So we're focusing only on the content from session 13 of the early sessions, book 1 of Seth Material. This one was recorded way back on Monday, January 6, 1964, kicking off right at 9 p.m.
And these early sessions, they're just fantastic, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because you see Seth defining these huge concepts like on the fly, responding directly to questions from Jane Roberts and Rob Butts.
That immediate pressure. And as we unpack all this, everything from like wandering monks to the physics of light, we want to be super clear right up front. This discussion, this whole deep dive, it's being distributed completely free of charge on all the major platforms. It's purely for educational purposes.
Right. We're just trying to pull out the key nuggets, the really important bits from this session and talk about them in a way that makes sense.
So our mission today, it's kind of got two parts, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. First, there's this really specific, kind of strange personal vision that Rob had. It involves a past life, and it's actually pretty funny in a way. It serves as a great hook into the session.
Okay. And the second part?
That's the main event, intellectually speaking. We're finally getting a definition for a term Seth had mentioned before but hadn't really explained. Mental enzymes.
Yes. Mental enzymes.
And getting your head around this one term, it honestly changes how you think about everything. Chemistry, biology, even your own emotions. It's foundational stuff.
Okay, so if you, the listener, want to follow along or maybe dig deeper afterwards, and honestly, we really recommend you do.
Oh, absolutely.
We have to credit the Seth Material and the publisher, New Awareness Network, for this amazing archive. We strongly, strongly encourage you to study the books themselves and definitely check out the New Awareness Network website and their bookstore. It's at https://sethcenter.com. The early dash sessions, you'll find the complete context there.
Yeah, this material really rewards that kind of deeper study. You get so much more out of it when you read the whole thing.
Okay, let's get into that opening then, because it really sets this interesting tone, this contrast. The session doesn't start with some grand philosophical statement, right?
No, not at all. It starts super specific, very personal. Robert Butts, asks about this vision he had. Just an image of a man walking. He thought maybe it was a past life thing and just wanted to know what it meant.
And Seth's answer is where you see that mix of like incredible precision, but also that characteristic wit.
Totally. He identifies the man as someone named Loren. And get this, Seth calls Loren Rob's present brother. So there's an immediate link.
Wow.
And he sees Loren specifically as a monk on a pilgrimage, which, immediately grounds this potentially lofty spiritual vision in a very human reality.
A monk on a pilgrimage, traveling to the Holy Lands. Sounds pretty epic, very spiritual quest.
It does. But then Seth, in classic Seth fashion, just punctures the seriousness with this brilliant mundane detail. It makes the whole scene just pop.
What was it?
The monk's shoes had been stolen while he was sleeping.
No way. Seriously. That's hilarious.
Isn't it great? It's the perfect little detail. Imagine the difficulty of that journey back then, how vulnerable you'd be, and then someone just nicks your shoes.
Yeah, it really grounds the whole doing penance idea. It wasn't just mystical thoughts. It was a hard, uncomfortable trek, maybe with some dodgy fellow travelers around.
Exactly. It shows the reality of the time. And Rob had also apparently seen some structures in the distance in his vision, thought they might be pyramids.
Okay.
But Seth corrects him. Says, nope, those were actually the ruins of monasteries.
Yeah.
So the setting is clarified. It's not Egypt. It's somewhere in Asia.
Ah, okay. So Loren the monk, Rob's present brother, was in Asia, middle-aged, on this pilgrimage, doing penance for his sins according to the customs of the age, and his shoes got stolen.
That's the picture. It's incredibly specific information, isn't it? Asia, middle years, penance. It gives context for Rob's current personality by linking it to this past life connection. Loren is his brother now, and apparently they knew each other back then too.
But the key follow-up question, the logical one, is where it starts to become a lesson about how this stuff actually works. Rob asks, was I alive then? Did I see him walking past me? Like, were they sharing the same physical space?
Right. And Seth's answer is very clear, sets a firm boundary. He just says, no, you weren't alive at that time.
Okay, so the vision wasn't a memory of a shared physical moment.
Exactly. It was purely a psychic connection, maybe a mental impression reaching across time, across lives. Not something Rob physically witnessed back then, but a connection tapping into that deeper layer of reality.
Which is actually the perfect setup, isn't it? If we can access these incredibly detailed, sometimes funny, historically specific images from a time and place we never physically experienced, then you have to ask, how does that information travel? What's the mechanism? How are these images even structured or stored? And that leads us right into the big challenging definition of this whole deep dive.
Precisely. That very personal, specific story about the monk, it basically acts as the proof of concept. It makes Rob and us ask the fundamental question about the nature of the reality that allows such connections. What's it made of? How does it work?
Okay, thinking caps firmly on now. This is where we really got to spend some time. This term, mental enzymes. Seth had dropped it a few times before session 13, but never really defined it. So Rob and Jane asked him to fill us in. Where does he even begin with a concept like that?
Well, he starts pretty logically, actually. He relates it to something we, or at least they, already kind of understood existed. Genes. He explains mental enzymes as something along the line of mental genes.
Okay, mental genes. That sort of makes sense. Like, we know physical genes are the blueprint for our physical body.
Right.
So are mental genes like the energetic blueprint behind the physical form, and then the enzymes? Are they like the workers that activate the blueprint?
That's a really good way to think about it, yeah. Seth basically confirms that relationship. He says, as mental genes are behind the physical genes, so to speak, so mental enzymes are behind the physical stuff that you can examine on your plane.
So they're behind the physical stuff, like deeper, more fundamental.
Exactly. They're the active agents. They're the initial spark, the catalyst for the action or the transformation that happens before you get a physical result, and they actually dictate what that physical result will be.
Okay, hang on. So if mental genes are the static plan, the blueprint, then mental enzymes are the dynamic force that reads the plan and actually starts building the thing, turning the energy or the thought into something tangible, something physical.
You've got it. They are the non-physical predecessors to the physical enzymes we know about from biochemistry. And then, to really make this concrete, he gives this killer example.
Which is?
Chlorophyll.
Chlorophyll. The green stuff in plants, the thing that does photosynthesis. How can that be a mental enzyme? If I were Rob Butts hearing that, I think my pencil would have just dropped.
I know, right? It completely flips the script on a purely materialist view of reality. Seth says flat out, in a sense, any color or quality of that nature could be considered a mental enzyme.
Any color? Wait, stop there. That's huge. If color itself is a mental enzyme, it means the greenness of grass or the blue of the sky. It isn't just a passive property of matter reflecting light waves.
Right. It requires an action initiated by a mental enzyme. There has to be an energetic mental exchange for that color to even appear to us.
So the material thing doesn't just possess color. The color is actively created through some kind of interaction between the mental and the physical.
That's the absolute key, the exchange of sorts between the mental and the physical. Chlorophyll isn't just green pigment. Seth says it's green but more than color. That more than color bit. That's its energetic function, its mental component. It's the inherent ability to act as a transformer, turning light and nutrients into life.
Wow.
It emphasizes that what we perceive as just a physical quality, like a particular shade of green, is actually the end result of an invisible fundamental action started by a mental enzyme.
So this changes everything. Like basic chemistry, any chemical reaction, any biological process, maybe even the texture of wood or the sound a bell makes. Does it all have a corresponding mental enzyme kicking things off behind the scenes?
That seems to be the implication. Absolutely. And you can see why Seth then gives this little warning, right? He admits this is one of the most difficult terms to explain. And he says it's part of a much bigger picture, a larger concept, and that the communicators, and by extension us, the listeners, do not have the necessary background yet.
I actually find that really helpful, that little disclaimer. It's like he's saying, look, this is cosmic level stuff. I can only give you a piece right now. It's intellectually humbling, isn't it? We're just getting glimpses.
Totally. And the glimpse he gives next is through another brilliant analogy.
The H2O one.
Exactly. Steam, water, and ice. Everyone gets that. They're all the same basic thing, H2O, right? Just in different states, different forms, depending on temperature and pressure.
Okay, so how does he apply that here to enzymes and...
Enzymes and feeling.
Yeah.
He connects the seemingly physical thing, chlorophyll, directly to the seemingly non-physical thing, emotion or feeling.
Hmm.
He says, and this is pretty mind-bending, so can a seemingly physical chlorophyll be also a part of a seemingly immaterial emotion or feeling, but in a different form?
Whoa, okay, unpack that. Chlorophyll is a form of feeling, like ice is a form of water.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
The underlying essence is the same energy, which he's starting to equate with feeling.
Mm.
It's just that the manifestation is different. Chlorophyll is like feeling that has sort of condensed or frozen into a very specific state of physical action photosynthesis, just like ice is condensed water vapor.
So the feeling that makes someone, say, love their family is fundamentally the same kind of energy that lets a plant turn sunlight into food. It's all the same basic universal stuff, the cohesive material, just expressed differently, biologically, emotionally, chemically.
That is the massive conceptual leap he's asking them and us to make. It points towards a monistic universe, everything ultimately made of one core energetic substance,
Okay.
which he's calling feeling or solidified feeling.
Wow. Okay.
And he has that little moment of, almost humorous self-awareness. Compares himself to a conductor leading a symphony, says he's far from it, sometimes hits a sour note, maybe.
Huh.
But insists he does pretty well with his figurative baton, suggesting he's got a handle on guiding these complex ideas about energy transformation.
It's like the whole universe is this ongoing symphony, and the mental enzymes are the sheet music, telling the different instruments the different forms of matter and energy when and how to play their part, when to transform feeling into physical form.
Beautifully put. Yeah.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit now. From the big picture, the mechanics of reality itself, down to the mechanics of communication. Specifically, how psychic information flows or doesn't flow through us humans.
Right. This comes up when the communicators ask Seth about a specific recitation Jane did, something about an English village called Levenshire, but Seth kind of redirects them.
Yeah. To what?
He points out that some other material she channeled, more general stuff about the fifth dimension, actually came through much more clearly. Unusually well and quite undistorted, he says.
Okay, that's interesting. Why the difference? Why would abstract stuff like the fifth dimension be clearer than, say, details about a specific village or maybe a past life?
It all comes down to the ego. That's Seth's explanation. The general abstract stuff like cosmology. It in no way jeopardizes her present personality or causes strain or panic.
Okay, so the ego, which is mostly concerned with keeping me being me right here, right now, and surviving in this physical world, it doesn't really care about the fifth dimension. It's not a threat.
Exactly. It's considered safe data. It doesn't challenge Jane's core identity as Jane.
Right.
But information that's really specific and personal, maybe details about a past life that contradicts her current beliefs, or information about people she knows well, people closely entwined with your own.
That's where the ego steps in, like a gatekeeper.
Precisely. The ego finds that kind of stuff burdensome, potentially disruptive, so it filters it, distorts it. This is especially true, Seth says, for life readings.
Why life readings in particular?
Because if the information implies you need to make a big psychological shift, or if it touches on what Seth calls a sore point in your current personality, the ego acts like a really strong firewall. It resists.
He uses that great metaphor, doesn't he? The sore point one.
Yeah. The more you push at a sore point, the sorer the point becomes. It's so relatable.
It really is. It's like a self-protection mechanism.
Totally. And the distortion that happens, it's not like Seth is making errors or the data itself is flawed. He calls it a natural distortion of data. It's often beyond his control, he says, because the receivers, Jane and Rob in this case, sometimes just do not understand what I'm trying to say. Their own filters, their own lack of framework or emotional readiness garbles the signal.
So if the information is really general, abstract, the emotional charge is low, and the psychic data stream is relatively clean.
Pretty much.
But the second the information starts demanding some real emotional processing from the receiver, the feeling, the cohesive stuff in their own mind starts pushing back, creating interference.
That's the fundamental trade-off he's describing.
Yeah.
Clarity versus personal relevance. The more directly a piece of information impacts your daily life, your identity, your sore points, the more likely it is to get distorted by your own ego trying to protect you.
It's like if you ask about the general nature of consciousness, you might get a clear answer. But if you ask, why did my friends say that hurtful thing yesterday? The answer might get so tangled up in your own feelings about it that it becomes almost useless noise.
Exactly right. And that's a crucial insight for anyone trying to understand this stuff, or even just understand themselves better. When you're seeking truth, especially personal truth, you have to be aware of your own ego's tendency to filter and distort. You almost have to try and lower the emotional stakes consciously.
Otherwise, your own defense mechanisms just turn the signal into static.
Yeah, it's a natural process, but one we need to be aware of.
Okay, so let's loop back now to the fundamental building blocks. We talked about mental enzymes as the active agents, the catalysts. But what's the raw material they're actually working on?
This is where Seth brings in the phrase solidified feeling. He actually challenges Jane and Rob, asking them why that phrase seems so outlandish.
Why does he challenge them?
Because, he points out, they already intellectually accept a related concept, that their physical plane, our reality, is composed of solidified thought.
Right, thought becoming matter.
So if they can accept that thought, which is structured mental energy,
Yeah.
can solidify into physical stuff, why is it such a stretch to think that feeling, which you could argue is an even more fundamental raw energy than thought, could be the basic cohesive substance?
That's a good point. It's like feeling is the clay, and thought maybe shapes it.
Something like that. And this is where we get that great bit of humor about science.
Oh, yeah, the high fiddle faddle.
Exactly. Seth predicts that eventually, when scientists finish all their complex experiments, their high fiddle faddle, they'll also stumble upon this truth that reality is ultimately made of solidified thought or feeling.
But he adds that little warning, right?
Oh, yeah. Woe to any one of them that dares breathe such a concept yet.
It's funny because it still feels pretty relevant today, doesn't it? Suggesting consciousness comes before matter is still a tough sell in many scientific circles.
Very much so. It took guts to say it back in '64, and it still does. But, okay, to help them grasp the structure of this solidified feeling, Seth reminds them of an idea from an earlier session.
The wire structure.
Yeah, that invisible wire structure penetrating everything that is. He says you got to imagine those wires are live, not just passive scaffolding, but active.
Okay, live wires, penetrating everything.
And then he connects the dots. He says, now imagine those live wires are actually made of the very solidified emotion or feeling we were just talking about.
Whoa, so the structure isn't just carrying energy. The structure is solidified energy,
Right.
solidified feeling.
That's the synthesis. The wires are the solidified feeling. And this leads back to the mental enzymes.
How so?
Mental enzymes are essentially solidified feeling too, but they're the specific type of solidified feeling that acts as the catalyst. They are the element that sets off the action within a mental enclosure.
Okay, mental enclosure, like a packet of thought and feeling.
You know, like a concentration of specific intent or emotion. And this enclosure, this packet, then starts to divide, multiply, act upon itself internally, almost like a cell dividing. And the result of that internal action is the material manifestation, the physical thing you see.
So the mental enzyme kicks off this internal geometric expansion within the feeling packet, and boom, you get a chair or a tree or us.
That's the process he's outlining. And because it's all about this internal transformation and external result, Seth makes a point about language. He says, I will always call any materialization an action from here on in, since, as you both know, by now nothing is stationary.
Everything is action, even seemingly static objects.
Apparently so. It reframes everything. Even things like love and hate, he explicitly defines them as action. Because they're powerful, cohesive feelings, they're constantly solidifying into physical states, thought patterns, behaviors, events.
So feeling is the glue, the cohesive with which mind builds.
That's the quote. Feeling is the fundamental cohesive substance that mind uses to construct reality.
Okay, but now for the really practical and frankly hilarious part, the warning about the walls.
Yes, the reality check.
If we understand intellectually that, okay, reality is solidified thought feeling, these walls around me are just convenient illusions held together by collective belief. Why can't I just, walk through them?
Because, as Seth points out, intellectually knowing the rather dubious nature of the walls isn't enough to make them go poof.
Why not?
Because the feeling that holds the wall together, the solidified collective agreement and action that maintains its structure is incredibly strong, stronger than your individual intellectual understanding.
And this is where he delivers that classic line.
The practical joke punchline. You had better act as if they were there or suffer a possible broken neck.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate caution against getting too carried away with metaphysical ideas without respecting the current rules of the game.
Exactly. You can know the ultimate truth, but the operational reality of this physical plane is enforced by incredibly powerful, solidified feeling. You ignore that framework at your immediate peril.
So the real key to freedom, to maybe perceiving beyond this plane, isn't just knowing the secret, it's actually changing the emotional building material itself.
That's precisely it. To gain real freedom, It is feeling the cohesive that must be changed. When you transform the feeling that constructs your reality, then you can start to see variants, perceive other possibilities, other realities.
You have to change the glue before the structure can shift.
You got it. A sustained shift in the emotional material allows the walls to become more permeable, revealing the bigger picture, hopefully without any unfortunate collisions.
All right, this next part is super important, I think, because it takes all this high-level abstract theory and grounds it immediately in something practical, something creative.
Yeah, this comes from Rob Butt's notes after the session. He was apparently working on this complicated ink drawing of a tree, and he was actively trying to apply these new concepts, trying to think in new ways as he drew.
So the drawing itself becomes the case study.
Exactly. The physical drawing he made, Seth, or Rob, interpreting Seth, defines it as solidified action. The whole process of drawing the intention, the emotion guiding his hand, the lines appearing on the paper that's feeling literally solidifying into form.
That's cool. Did he break it down further, like the lines themselves?
Oh yeah, he gets into the geometry of it. He suggests that a curved line might represent a thought that's complicated, maybe a bit crooked, or even incomplete. It suggests, complexity, maybe some hesitation, the natural flow of consciousness.
Okay, so curves are complex thoughts. What about straight lines?
A straight line, he suggests, might represent a more simple, direct action or thought. It's decisive, efficient, point A to point B.
And then he makes this observation about our world, doesn't he?
He does. Rob notes that there seem to be way more curved lines than straight ones in art, in our actual lives, even in nature, our physical habitat.
So if lines represent thought and action, the fact that curves dominate suggests our current reality, our plane, kind of favors complexity, maybe indirectness, maybe even incompletion, over simple, direct clarity.
That's a pretty profound interpretation, yeah. It's like we naturally meander more than we march straight ahead in our thinking and doing on this level.
That really makes you think about how we operate. What else did he define in the drawing?
He looked at junctures, places where lines meet or cross. He saw those as representing a flowering of thought through action. Like the point where an idea connects, sparks something new, leads off in a new direction.
And emphasizing a line, making it darker or thicker.
That he interpreted as thought being translated into more positive, more definite, stronger action. You're putting more force, more solidified feeling behind that particular line or idea.
So an artist sketching really quickly, lightly, lots of curves, they're solidifying, maybe complex, fleeting, less defined feelings. But an artist drawing a bold, straight, heavily emphasized line, they're solidifying a clear, strong, positive thought or action.
Yeah, the actual physical marks on the paper become a direct map of the internal, emotional, and mental landscape that produced them. The creative act is reality creation in miniature. But then Joseph, Rob, takes it a step further. He starts thinking about how different types of art affect the viewer. And this ties right back into changing that cohesive feeling we talked about.
How so? Abstract versus recognizable art.
Exactly. He notes that abstract art seems to appeal directly on a subconscious level.
Right.
It bypasses your intellect and generates an immediate emotional response that's action happening right there on our plane within the viewer.
Okay, so it hits the feeling level first.
Right. And because it kind of slips past the ego's filters, this kind of art can be incredibly powerful. That emotional response, the solidified feeling it creates in you, the viewer, is allowed to, as he puts it, radiate its warmth through all levels of being. It directly changes your cohesive structure, your feeling state, without needing your intellectual permission first.
Whereas recognizable art, like a portrait or a landscape that appeals from the top down, your intellect engages first, right? You see it, identify it, oh, that's a boat, and then the emotion follows.
Precisely. And this leads Rob to wonder, is that top-down recognizable art ultimately as profound in its impact as abstract art, given how they penetrate differently?
Is the deep subconscious emotional kick from abstraction a more powerful catalyst for change than the more intellectual appreciation of realism?
That's the question he leaves hanging. And it really reinforces that core lesson from earlier. Just knowing something intellectually isn't the same as feeling it or changing because of it. Abstract art, by targeting the feeling, the cohesive material, directly, it seems to operate more like the mental enzymes themselves, demanding a fundamental energetic shift in the observer, not just a mental nod of agreement.
Okay, so as Seth starts to wrap up this incredibly dense session, the communicators, Jane and Rob, are trying to fit all this new stuff, mental enzymes, solidified feeling, action as reality, into the picture of identity and memory. They ask him about how many worlds are remembered within.
Right. And Seth characteristically sort of challenges the question itself, says it leaves much to be desired. The problem isn't counting worlds, he suggests. It's understanding the structure of memory, which isn't just one thing.
He breaks it down into levels, right? 3 levels.
Yeah, 3 distinct levels, and it's crucial to see they're different. First, there's the subconscious memory of the personality. This holds all the stuff from your current life that's maybe suppressed, forgotten feelings, recent experiences just below the surface.
Okay, subconscious current life stuff. Level 1.
Second, the conscious memory of the personality. This is your everyday memory, what your ego allows you to recall and identifies as you, your name, your job, what you had for breakfast.
Got it. Level 2, conscious ego memory. What's level 3? The big one.
That's the memory of the entity. The entity is the larger soul self, the overarching consciousness that is aware of all its personality's lives, past, present, maybe even simultaneous ones. This level holds the entire library of experience, way beyond what the current personality's ego can normally access or handle.
And this is the critical point for us listening now. Why can't we just tap into that massive entity library consciously, especially after getting all this mind-blowing information about how reality works? Why isn't it just available?
It basically comes down to bandwidth and function. The ego, our conscious personality running the show on this physical plane, simply cannot maintain its focus, its coherence, and manage that overwhelming flood of data from the entity level simultaneously.
It would just short circuit.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Seth makes that wry observation, that most people struggle just to remember one idea from one week to another on a conscious, deliberate basis. How could they possibly handle the complexities of countless lifetimes all at once?
That puts it in perspective. The ego's busy making sure we don't try to walk through that wall and break our necks, like you said earlier. Its job is managing this immediate physical reality.
Exactly. It's a necessary filter, a manager for survival and function on this plane. Trying to download the entire entity of memory into the conscious mind would likely be completely destabilizing.
So accessing those deeper memories, the entity stuff, it requires a different state, not the everyday ego mind.
It seems so. It likely requires quieting the ego, shifting the state of consciousness, changing that cohesive feeling we keep coming back to. It's not something easily done while you're worrying about deadlines or traffic.
Which leads perfectly into how Seth actually closes the session. He acknowledges how heavy this material is.
Yeah, he closes gently. He basically says, let's stop here because this stuff is difficult on the digestion.
Like a big, rich meal.
Exactly. He's being mindful. He says he hesitates to give an excess of data before their next meeting. Why? Because this kind of information needs to be integrated, processed on a deeper level, not just stacked up intellectually. It needs time to actually shift the feeling inside.
It needs to be digested, not just swallowed whole.
Precisely. And then he ends with that lovely, warm little compliment, doesn't he, for Jane and Rob?
Yeah.
He says, in any case, you bear with me very well, and I can say the same for myself.
That's great. It's like this funny, slightly proud, very human moment after successfully wrestling with these enormous cosmic definitions, like, phew, we did it.
It really maintains that relaxed conversational feel right to the end. Even when defining the energetic nature of existence itself, the exchange stays grounded, friendly, manageable. It reminds us that integrating this kind of deep knowledge is a process, slow and steady.
Okay, let's try and pull the main threads together from what we've digested today. We started with a monk getting his shoes stolen.
Yeah, right?
And we ended up realizing that basically everything material from chlorophyll in a leaf to our own feelings of love or anger is fundamentally the same energetic stuff, just in different states, different forms, like ice, water, and steam.
And those mental enzymes are essentially specific forms of solidified feeling that act as the catalysts, the sparks that kick off all physical action, all materialization.
Yeah. But the really fascinating takeaway for me, the thing that sticks, is that just knowing this intellectually doesn't change much on its own.
Exactly. You can understand the walls are illusory, just solidified feeling, but you still can't walk through them. Not until you actually change the feeling, the cohesive energy that's holding your reality together.
So the real key to expanding perception, gaining freedom, maybe even accessing that deeper entity memory, it lies in transforming our feelings, our emotional state, not just collecting more intellectual facts.
That's the core message, I think. Emotional transformation is reality transformation.
Couldn't have said it better. Okay, once again, huge credit to the Seth Material. Please, if this resonates with you, go explore the full sessions, check out the publisher, New Awareness Network, and their website, https://sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
Definitely worth your time. And before we sign off, here's something to maybe mull over this week. A provocative thought. building right on what we discussed from session 13.
Okay, let's have it.
If Seth defines both hate and love simply as action, which is the physical manifestation of solidified feeling, and if you accept that you are constantly solidifying your feelings into the world around you, take a look. What daily, maybe habitual actions are you repeating? What feelings are you constantly solidifying that are literally creating the framework, the walls of your immediate reality? And maybe ask yourself, how much more deliberately would you choose which emotions to solidify if you really knew deep down that your feelings were the building blocks of your world?
That is definitely something to chew on. Good night, friends.
Good night. We'll catch you for the next deep dive.